And we are live. Thank you so much. Welcome back to Web3 DJs. We have a fantastic guest on the show today. We've got Vicky J, a true OG in the NFT space. And I'm just going to read through her Twitter bio here. So head of community of Flower Girls NFT, space host, NFT Daily Grind Show, Mutant Monday podcast, and just a fantastic person to represent the women in NFTs. So anyway, thank you so much, Vicky. We appreciate you coming on. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. You could mention the over 50 part. I've got over it now.
The over 50 part. Yeah, it puts you in an exclusive category.
Yeah, over 50 DEGEN is quite something because it means you've got the battle scars of the previous 30 years in social media.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then you can start a mentorship program for all of us, millennial DEGENs.
Yeah. I don't know if it's a mentorship. I think it's more like a self-help therapy group right now.
Yeah, right. Right.
That's so funny. I am curious, actually. That's a great point. Generally, at least in my experience, the demographic has been somewhere between, let's say 22 and 35, maybe 22 and 40. At least that's what I've been exposed to. How are you finding people that are like you in this space, Vicky? Is there a large crowd of people that are older than 50 that are in Web3? Are you making connections with these people? What exactly does that look like?
There's definitely a whole mixed batch ranging from some of the 13-year-olds that are in the space, 13 and 14, that you are quite vocal on Twitter Spaces, to ones that are building. I mean, obviously last year we had a point where I kind of remember there being a young coder out there, and it came out of the blue, this project, and I was like, I took a look at myself afterwards because I was one of the first people that went, no way. It's just like it was so weird that this project dropped overnight. No one had heard of it. This kid was supposed to be 13 and obviously lived to eat my words because he was in fact I think 13 and had his dad's help, ranging up to I recently met a lady called Carrie, who I'm going to interview on my podcast, who's in her 70s, and she actually bought 2 Bored Apes. So there's a kind of a broad sweeping demographic and around the world, which will only grow. And Twitter Spaces has been phenomenal for kind of getting that reach of understanding. And you can kind of sometimes see by the way people respond to stuff as well, and how they reply, their age group, and the fact that, as I say, because I'm now in this kind of the upper bracket of Web3 people, I'm old enough to remember, obviously, before we had computers, and I sound like my grandma now. Like, I remember when we had a computer that was bigger than the size of the table. But again, that gives you a kind of a broader outlook on obviously everything that's happening for Web3.
Yeah, and you've been around for a while. I remember when I first came in, you may not know this, but you were one of the first 3 people I think I followed. And what I was doing is I was looking for people that had .eth endings, and I was just following everybody that had a .eth because I was like, well, they probably know what they're doing if they have a .eth. Because what I did was like, what is a .eth? And once I figured that out, I was like, I gotta have that. And you had that, and I think at that time you were talking a lot about Gary Vee says that we should be creating content. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm just going to do it, and you did it, and you've kind of over the last year have grown significantly. But what is your how did you get into NFTs? I've heard a little bit about your background, but maybe you could share, what your background was before, and then how you got into NFTs and what you're doing now.
Yeah, I mean, I started running my own business probably about 20 plus years ago, and I basically started it on my own and built it up till the tail end of that was 2 shops, 15 employees, about to hit a £1 million turnover. And when I was on that journey of growing from a business that I started on my own to build up, I, in the course of events, met Gary, just liked his content, ended up saying to my husband, going to drive up to Liverpool. There's this dude called Gary Vee. I've not met anyone that I resonate with as much as him in the sense of what people are not getting about social media. And I kind of got there early enough, drove for 8 hours, sat there front row. And it was funny because back then, you're talking 7, 8 years ago, there was a crowd of maybe, I don't know, 200 people. And there was probably only about 3 of us that actually understood him. like we got where he was coming from. We were like nodding heads and like, we get you, and everybody else was just like, who is this kind of guy? And over the course of from that point onwards, I ended up there. He did Ask Gary V show, and when they got to episode 100, they put out a call and said, you know, it's an open invite, anyone that wants to come. And 3 of us in the kind of like the social communities, like basically just 2 Canadian guys and myself in London, you went, yeah, that sounds cool, that's going to be good. And I remember Gary's team reaching out, they like, we've just heard like you're flying from London for this like 30-minute show, is that true? And I'm like, yeah. and I think as well, because around that time there was also another social media app that you guys might have heard of called Meerkat. And Meerkat was the kind of precursor to Periscope coming out. And when I saw Meerkat, and a dude was wandering around with his phone, like videoing a trade show, which was like their opening kind of, this is, you know, this, I think they got an influencer maybe to go around with their phone and video stuff. And I was so excited. I was like, this is amazing, because being a business owner, like I can live stream my store, people can see what's going on, it's interactive. And we did 18 hours a day of video content, like for a long time. And a lot of that's how a lot of American people got to find kind of this weird British lady and her husband and all their staff as well, because like we built up, there was like this crazy leaderboard, and I'll never forget, because it was just so bizarre. You had this kind of top 10 leaderboard, and then you had our company called the Funky Fairy, and then you had above us was Madonna, below us was U2, and then about 3 or 4 down was Gary. And I always used to laugh, because obviously they'd only have to stream once, and their kind of points on the leaderboard would go batshit crazy. But I used to take screenshots, because I'm like, this is like not the real world. Yeah, it was a crazy time. So we did Meerkat for a long time, and that's kind of how I ended up being. And then I ended up obviously at so many different kind of conferences because of like the live stream aspects and people getting to know our company, that I ended up being at so many events that Gary was at. It just became like a thing kind of thing. It was like the in joke about, I'm kind of like your stalker, because wherever you are. And then of course, then NFT NYC last year, it was a lot of people have asked me whether it was pre-planned. So those that don't know, my Twitter bio, I got a pinned video where I was asked to go up on the stage at NFT NYC. And you can hear Gary's voice, hello, Vicky, because it's like there was no staging. Jody, one of the organizers, asked me up on stage, and I'm like, oh my God, like I obviously not planned for that to kind of happen. So to get up on stage, there's a lot of people in the kind of NFT space that know me through the synonymous video of clambering up onto the stage with no steps with my pink hugs. But
you know, it's funny. I was like right in front, right there when that happened.
You were like 2 away.
You were like right there, and I was right here. Yeah. And then of course the other thing that happened from that video is that after speaking up and sharing my voice, that a couple of speakers later was a lady called Emily who asked her question, and obviously everyone was standing up and clapping and cheering. And when we finished that event, we were outside, and Emily actually came up and introduced herself as a V friend, and basically said, you know, I couldn't thank you enough. And I was like, I was a bit confused. I was like, well, why? She goes, well, I'm an introvert. She said, I never ask questions. I never put my hand up. And she said, hearing that you were like kind of just brave enough to put yourself out there and get up. She goes, I shot my hand up and then was super surprised when obviously I got to ask a question. And then she kind of hugged me. And it was like that moment where you like, there's 2 like women crying in the street, because it's so emotional that you can kind of empower somebody else that wouldn't have had a voice to have a voice. That's super cool. So was VeeFriends the first NFT project that you bought?
Yes.
Wow. So are you still, I'm assuming you're still holding your VeeFriends Series 1?
Yep. Yeah. They're just tucked away. They're like a savings account. They're just there in the back. And again, that was a conversation because I'd also done Gary's 4Ds program. So when
what is that 4Ds?
The 4Ds, so that's like a business program that they roll out as well, where you can go to VaynerMedia and you have like a day of immersive experience. And I remember like a group of us kind of being together for Gary, sort of talking to us about his up and coming project. And like he wasn't saying buy, he was just saying this is what's coming out, you know, and I'd like you to kind of all take the time to educate yourselves, because, you know, I think it's going to be an interesting time. And I kind of really pushed it to one side, because I was like, oh, you know, I've never been involved in crypto before, and I really don't know what I'm doing. And to get to the point of obviously the drop, and then missing out on the drop because Coinbase wouldn't release, so I didn't get like first choice. It was just stressful, really. And a couple of people said they would reach out and help me, and they never did. And that's how I kind of learned moving forward that, like, at the moment you're pretty much on your own. You know, if something goes right or something goes wrong, you know, you're in your own home trying to work out for the best. But I'm pleased to say that now we're like a year later, there's a kind of starting to be a support system. There's people I trust in the industry that I know that they trust me, I trust them. And if somebody's in trouble, I can kind of reach out and say, you know, hey, have you got 5 minutes to help this person? And knowing that it's going to be okay. I mean, last year we helped someone that got scammed on Labor Day, and he was a well-known athlete, and this poor guy got scammed, and I was like, you're typing these words in the tweet, which is going to make you more of a victim again, because people, and I remember doing it at the spaces, and I'm typing in the background to this guy, is like, is this still going on? You know, do you need any help? And he's like at the time, he said afterwards, he said he didn't trust me either, which is understandable. Like, who am I, kind of thing. But somebody else had reached out to him and said, you know, if Vicky's there to give you a helping hand, like, take it, like, she'll steer you to the right person. And I managed to get him to like a security expert that spent 4 hours with him on Labor Day, shifting all of his NFTs out, putting a little bit of gas in, shifting his NFTs out before obviously the hacker could get them. And I'm like, it's crazy. It's like Wild West.
Totally. Yeah. Was that OK Hotshot?
It was not, no. Although
Yeah,
we do follow each other now. Like, he's a cool guy. So there's a few in the community. So
okay,
Yeah,
so you had V friends,
yep.
and then did you mint Bored Ape, or did you buy on secondary? And
I
did you get an
bought on
OG or did you
secondary.
just get a mutant?
I got an OG. Yeah, that was the kind
Minted?
of a surreal. I think I picked mine up in June. I think, like, it was about 4 weeks later. But when I think I remember hearing about them on Clubhouse, and they were making lots of ape noises. And I must admit, I didn't really think about it back then. I was never a big kind of fan of Clubhouse. It just didn't kind of feel right to me, in so much as when Spaces came along, it kind of just clicked. But I remember having borrowed money out of our savings for V Friends, and then having that conversation with my husband about, you know, I want to use our savings for the V Friends. Then
sure
it
that
was
went
kind
well.
of, yeah, well, like, he trusts me, because obviously having built like one business, and then obviously then moved to America and being on another business, is like, pretty much we have that relationship where, if, you know, if I say that I'm going to do something, my intuition and gut instinct and research is normally enough. And that proved obviously quite inspirational down the line, in a sense of, after the V Friends, which I wanted to do because obviously to be a part of Gary's project. And then about 2 weeks later, I've been looking into the culture, and I've been looking into the kind of Bored Apes. And what enticed me was the IP, because I thought, well, I can buy one of these cool, funky apes and have it as IP and branding for my ice cream store. And then I had the next conversation, which is, oh, by the way, honey, you know, can I borrow the last little bit of our savings, because I want to buy a JPEG of an ape, you know. And I think it's that moment where somebody just looks at you, and you get it a lot in kind of like the NFT space, where they look at you either going, you're actually lost your mind, or it's going to be the best thing you ever did. So yeah, getting into the kind of the Bored Ape Yacht Club was kind of like great, in the sense of I got in early and I got an OG8, but most people know me for the Mutant, because the Mutant just felt right to me. So people are generally surprised when they find out I actually have a heart eyes, very cute ape as well. But yeah, he kind of sits in the background, really.
Yeah, you know, I'm kind of curious, Vicky. When we were talking about VFriends, you had mentioned that you were not in crypto at all, which is kind of not the norm, right? Generally, what we hear is people are in crypto and then they migrate to NFTs, and it's kind of natural, right? What was it specifically that made you say, like, I want to pull the trigger and jump into this space. Like, what about NFTs attracted you and made you feel like this was a good opportunity?
I think because obviously I've seen over the years, like I say, I've seen obviously the Facebook, Instagram. I've seen the kind of the culture and how it shifted with regards to how people use obviously having retail businesses, the opportunity that is there for retailers. And obviously I didn't necessarily think I would embrace it as much as I have, but I was, as I got more into it and started to learn about it. I mean, initially I think my thought was, I'll just get a couple of friends and that'll be it. But with having culture of loving cartoons and then falling in love with the apes, and then I bought a couple of goats, and I loved the fact that you could buy these goats and then they'd set up this kind of system where you could burn 2 goats and make your own goat. There was lots of like clever stuff going on in the background that made me think, well, let's embrace kind of this and see where it goes. Is it kind of the next iteration of the web? And some of it is still quite tricky, some of it is still very web 2 orientated, but I mean, obviously we'll see, probably like my daughter and her and my grandchildren as well will start to see the benefits of what the blockchain can provide for them.
Yeah, my 13-year-old daughter, I came home from work yesterday, and obviously she sees me doing NFT stuff all the time. And I walk in and she's like, she had her MetaMask connected to Opensea and then had created a collection and uploaded the collection. And I was like, how did you figure that out? She goes, Dad, I just watched TikTok. I was like, that took me like 3 months to figure out. What do you mean you just watch it on TikTok?
Yeah.
But it's crazy. These kids pick it up super fast.
Yeah, I've got 3 children. 2 are a lot older. 1 grandchild, and the youngest of my 3 is 14, and she's been using Minecraft for 4, 5, 6, 6 years now, constantly. So she's also learned how to use Discord before we did. So if ever we need any help, she's obviously right there. So I actually said to her the other day, and I wished I could have videoed it, because I said to her, is like, obviously I've got this virtual land now, so I'm probably going to need your help building it. Like in she's 6 years, she's a builder. I foresee a time when she finishes college where obviously that's going to be on her resume, because building virtual lands and stuff like that seems crazy, but she'll be sort of kick ass at it. And I went, I'm going to probably need some help building out on these lands. And she just kind of just rolled her eyes at me. She went, nope.
That's so funny. My daughter did the same exact thing. I had sandbox land, and I was like, you got to get off of Roblox and you got to build on here. And she got on it. She's like, nah, she went right back to Roblox and was like, this is lame, So I was like, the exact same experience. That's funny.
Yeah. And there's nothing weirder than hearing a person wander around muttering under their breath, I must have a coder with a weapon. I must have a coder with a weapon. And like nobody really knows what you're talking about, other than the self-help group on Twitter, where obviously we have this kind of like, obviously the group of the kind of the people that don't have any, the people that have coders, and then the people that have, well, in fact, you've got weapons and mega coders. And I'm like many other people, I'm watching every day and kind of like, the market's coming down. It's gone from obviously I think it was like 34, 32, 22, and I'm like, the trouble is like everyone's waiting for it to get to that lowest point. So there's always going to be people that have got very large bags that will just go, yep, I'll have that, and it'll be gone before you even load it up.
Yeah, absolutely. We may know a little bit about that ourselves, right? Actually brought up a great opportunity or a great point here, that the market is, for lack of a better phrase, I don't like to call it completely bearish yet, but a lot of people are saying that we are experiencing a downturn. I mean, I guess it's obvious, if you look at any of the charts. What opportunities are you seeing right now? I love to hear how people think about this. Some people call it a crisis. I like to say, even if you are going to call it a crisis, you should never waste a good crisis. So what opportunities are you seeing from the market right now?
It's a tricky one, because everyone is so different in terms of obviously what position they're in. If you've got your position in good projects, then it's just, for me personally, it's very much a waiting game. It's like, I'm not in any hurry. I'm kind of, not say happy in the happy sense, but like, I haven't overinvested, so I don't have to worry that, you know, there's going to be serious consequences. And very much, if everything was to go to zero like an hour from now, yeah, of course I would be devastated and sad, but not maybe in the reasons that everyone thinks. Not because I've lost money, because I will pat myself on the back that I took a chance, but more the fact that I know that I have friends and artists that use that money to feed their families, use their money to pay their rent. So I would ultimately be more worried and sad for those people in our community than, you know, not everybody has that extra money to buy when it's low, sell when it's high. And some people obviously don't understand. I'm not into kind of stocks and shares, so I'm learning a lot of the kind of basic kind of things when people are talking about everything from I don't know, USDT or whatever. A lot of it kind of goes over my head. I'm like, I don't understand it, but I'm trying to learn it because somebody comes in the community and asks me, and I'm like, you know, if I can defer them to somebody else that can explain it better. But yeah, I mean, it's quite kind of humbling to see when you have, you know, you have a free airdrop given to you of X amount and you go, oh, that's, you know, that's really nice. I wasn't expecting that. So you have that figure, and then all of a sudden, you know, you look at it 3 weeks later and it's maybe 30% of that original figure. And you go, for example, with the apecoin, I looked at it when it was like 20, and then it went to 28, and then it went back down. And I had thought about obviously my position there, and I decided that I actually was going to do one thing, but because it was our daughter's birthday, I ended up doing nothing. So it is what it is. It's like, I don't, like I said to my husband, it's like I said to him I was going to sell at a certain price, some of, and I didn't. And I can't be mad about that, because the way I look at it is that apecoin is an ecosystem that will be built. And, you know, if it's worth 8 or it's worth 30, I'm in for the long haul, because I'm excited to see what they're going to build, you know, and it may pay off, you know, it may not. They've got these investors on board, but certainly the friends that I've met within that ecosystem, and that was tough. That was slightly tough, because I think going into the Bored Ape Yacht Club, and when I first went in, I was quite timid and shy, in the sense of like the apes are very vocal and very loud. And then I kind of had to take a very different stance, because I realized very early that there's lots of ape holders that are female, but they stay in the shadows. And so started doing the Mutant Monday podcast to kind of get it out there, kind of thing, and just be a little bit more kind of prominent in the sense of, well, you know, I'm here, kind of thing. So it's a kind of like a safe place for other women to come. So I think you have to have a thick skin. If you ever go into the Bored Ape Yacht Club Discord, you do have to have a slightly thicker skin and understand the meme culture. And that's something that I kind of really, really enjoyed since I've been around, is the memes and the GIFs. And several of the community members have made me some amazing GIFs of Vendetta, my mutant. And that's the part of the community I enjoy. And that sounds bizarre. It's like, you know, I don't look up every morning and go, oh, you know, when moon, when millionaire, what money have I made today? I'm like, what gift can I make today? What, as you know, some of the gifts and that kind of thing. But yeah.
So that's great. And I just pulled it up, and I'll show it again. But why don't you talk to us a little bit about this Mutant Monday, the show that you've got going on? You know, what exactly is it? How did it get started, and where's it sit now?
So I started it because I wanted to do, I know that there are some characters in the space that have such amazing backstories as to why they bought an ape, how they bought an ape, what they're doing with their ape now, that I wanted to grasp that time in history, so that as it grows, people can look back in like 6 months, a year, 9 months to see, look at some of those PFPs that I can see there all mean something different to me. For example, Boy Becky, obviously she's got her ape, but obviously she's ultimately known for taking over Fame Lady Squad.
Yeah, Benjamin on there.
Yeah, and they like
crazy
they
how you
all
recognize
have,
these apes.
Yeah, they all have personalities. Metamori, his voice is like butter, and I've long since said to him, I actually reached out to Calm App. I said they should sign him up, because he does like meditations with his ape, And the first one I ever did actually was Herb, who's a moderator in the Bored Ape Yacht Club, and his story is so emotional about the country that he comes from, and buying ape, and his mum buying an ape as well. Yeah, so many people have, like, it's just not even Crypto Painter on there as well. He's like from Hollywood and involved in Hollywood films, and he didn't tell anyone who he was for a long while. He wanted to stay anonymous, but then he found that by staying anonymous, it was more of an enigma to everybody, and it was weighing him down because people were more focused on who he was rather than his art. So once he kind of said, this is who I am, and this is my IMDb, and he's like obviously involved in so many films, people then moved on. So yeah, so it's kind of like I did that for a little while. Then I also found it quite difficult because some people stay anonymous, and sent a whole load of DMs out to people. And this is one thing I would say is that people are surprised about is for every, I don't know, say for every 10 DMs I sent out to people, would you like to be on the podcast? And this is what it's about. This is what I'm doing. I maybe, if I'm lucky, got one response. So it's tough out there, Now that could just be because they're on. It could just be because they just don't want to put themselves out there. But I wanted it to capture that bit of history, because I also know pretty much that all those ones you just showed, they have no intention of selling. It doesn't matter what the cost is. They're in for the long haul.
Yeah, we got a buddy of ours. His name's Rowan. Shout out Rowan. He's a day one holder. I don't know if he's day one. I think he bought it like a week after, but he has no intention of selling. None of this stuff matters to him. It's that important, which is kind of crazy to think that you have that strong of a community. So just moving on, you're in spaces. Like I was going to ask you on a daily average, how many hours are you spending in spaces? If you just had a guess.
I have no idea. And the reason why I have no idea, I think, is because what people forget is, and people don't realize, is that I get asked to be on, like, as a guest and as like to be interviewed on spaces a lot. And when I explain to people like what my timetable is, they're like, oh shit, that's not going to work. And I go, that's what I've been trying to tell you. So because I have obviously my normal job, which is obviously I own an ice cream store, and we used to be 7 days a week, but now, like, I've taken a stance that, like, from this year we'll be open 6 days a week. So from 6 days a week, from 2 o'clock in the afternoon till 10 o'clock at night, my store is open and I'm there. So then that means obviously I don't get home till 11 at night. So when people see me on Spaces, more often than not, I'm either driving to work, driving home from work, or I'm in the store, for example, like in the afternoons. It won't be the same in June, July, but like, for example, yesterday, we had a power cut. So I couldn't let anyone into the store, but I was listening on Spaces like for an hour and that kind of thing. So that I'm learning all the time. So it seems like I'm just kind of sitting in a room on Spaces, but I always say to people that know me, is like, sometimes in the back channels, they'll invite me up and I'll message them and say, I'm giving you a heads up. Like, if you don't hear from me, there's a good chance that I'm serving customers. So don't call me out, because like, I'm listening in my earpiece in one ear while I'm serving. And then they'll go, and over to you, Vicky. And I'm like, not over to me.
That's so funny. Yeah, I think you actually kind of brought up a really great point. And something I've been thinking about personally is, this show will be on YouTube. And so what I've tried to do is, for a number of different reasons, start to watch NFT videos or crypto videos on YouTube. And I've tried to use that as, a way for me to continue to learn. I consider myself a lifelong learner. This space is no different. But that being said, there's something about just getting into a Twitter space that makes it stick. One, I don't know if it's just because it's raw. You can ask questions. You're getting, answers to something that you specifically have a question about. If it's the type of people there, if it's the content that's being talked about. But I feel like no matter what, I learn way more from Twitter spaces than I do anything else.
Because we've got the right bunch of people, and for the most part, everybody's in it for to learn, and everyone realizes we're all at the same point. There's no experts, there's no stupid questions. And also, I think it helps with obviously what we've had going on in the world the last couple of years. People have missed that human connection. And when I did the daily grind show for a long period of time, I did an hour a day, and people would come that had nothing to say other than just want to be part of like a pub chat where you all come into the pub, and the iconic thing of just guys sitting around a table, you know, talking about the weather or whatever, that kind of connectivity. And I think that's what Spaces has done, because people that feel conscious about how they look maybe, or something that's going on maybe where they're streaming from, Spaces takes away all that. It's just a voice to voice kind of thing. And the fact that people can engage, come up, and people that don't have a voice normally that you can say in your show is like, I would love someone to come up that's never spoken on Spaces before. And over the last kind of like 9 months, there's been people that have gone on through the initial streams last year to launch their own shows and say to me, you know, you're right. Once you like riding a bike, you keep going, it gets easier. And even now, there's big spaces that I get for whatever reason. I ended up on a big space yesterday, and somebody said to me, how comes you ended up like, they literally said to me in the DM, how comes you ended up on there? I went, I hit the request button like everybody else. I said, but I do think that there's the backstory to that, is that the person who accepted is a human at the other end, will also know that I will give my view if I'm asked, and I won't flannel it, but I also won't scream and shout. I'm not gonna mess up their space, you know, and cause kind of just trouble kind of thing for the sake of it, and try and be impartial on some counts, and always making sure as well, whenever, like if it's certain discussions on spaces, it's very important when it's the NFT space, that if it's kind of an elevated space, that it is discussed whether you hold bags in that position, as opposed to your view about why you should even be able to kind of I think the biggest hurdle we face in NFT space is not money right now. I think is empathy.
Yeah. So aside from your spaces, what is your favorite space to be on or to listen to?
Oh, I have lots of different ones that I kind of go. I love Captain and Steve Bark's Coffee in the Morning. That's always a good
Which
one.
one is it?
I think
You
it's
see us
called.
with our pens. Every time you say something, we're writing.
It's 8 a.m. in the morning with Captain Swingley and NFT Bark, Steve Bark. They do coffee morning at 8 a.m. And that's always really good. And then Nifty Alpha, which is 9 till 10:30. That you never know what you're going to get every day. So that's been a really cool one to be a part of. And there's also an evening one, which is the Graveyard Shift with Phil Backer. And
on Saturdays?
Yeah, it's a really late night.
Are you in
one,
Deadheads?
I used to be.
Yeah, I got 3 of them staked. They're for like 2 years or something like that.
Yeah, I used to be at the very beginning, and that was one of those ones where it's funny. It's like I was so excited to get in at the beginning, and I got some things, and then some communities grab you and some didn't. And I found that for me personally, that there was other communities where I felt I would kind of fit better, and that's worked out really well. Rather than kind of just, you've got to find what community works best for your kind of vibe, really.
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, a lot of people, and sometimes the sentiment around the market is that it's very saturated. You know, the way I view it is there's just a ton of opportunity to kind of find your niche, right? Find where you fit in best.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to ask you a question. We've talked a lot about, you know, the positives, your experience with VFriends, Bored Ape Yacht Club. Have you had any negative experiences in the space? Have you been, you know, rugged or had any anything like that?
I probably have, but if I have, I've not really kind of thought about it too much, in the sense of I probably had projects where things have kind of were going to happen and maybe didn't. I can't actually think any off the top of my head, but I
That's
mean,
great.
yeah, I think it's because I'm kind of very picky, and I like to know who the founders are. You know, if I'm gonna buy into a project and be a part of the community, I like to know who's around me, kind of thing. Yeah, so there's always that as well, and that's one of the reasons why I kind of fell in love with Flower Girls as well, because Vivara's art is just so amazing, and that community as well is one of my favorite Discord communities because everyone is so like unfailingly kind, and it's people's time is torn between kind of so many projects, but yeah, it's like you go into that Discord and everyone is so kind of like positive.
Yeah. So talk to us about that real quick. You are the head of community for Flower Girls. That's correct.
Yes.
How did you find out about this project? What first attracted you? Did you get in at the mint? Tell us about that.
No, didn't get in at mint. And then I think maybe it was like a week later or something like that. And I think Gary and the gang had got into that one. So I didn't, for whatever reason, it was off my radar. Maybe something else was going on, and I kind of bought a couple, and then I bought a couple more, and then that kind of just snowballed because I just loved like how different they were as well. And then the team reached out because they could see obviously how much I kind of loved the Flower Girls, and obviously had heard me on Spaces as well, and I was in the Discord. I was very active, and they approached me about it, and I really didn't hesitate because it was like when you ask to be a part of a project that's kind of like there's so much kind of like art going on, it's very different than a PFP per se, in the sense of you know, you've got meme culture on one group, you've got shit posted on another. Every different project has like a different culture behind it, and again, this is very, very different. We partnered with Dolphin earlier this year, and there's so many things in the background that are going on with regards to PR and marketing and things that are happening. There's going to be a hotel room that's going to be designed by Vivara in New York. There's a gin coming out as well that's going to be to do with Flower Girls, and it's tricky because obviously you've got a company in the background that's kind of like got all these opportunities, and we can't discuss them all. So it's kind of hard because you can't just tell everybody. You just have to like, let's not talk about that because you don't want to end up tripping yourself up and saying something that you shouldn't.
So what exactly do you do though with the company? Is your job just to talk about it and to answer questions, or what does that role consist of?
There's quite a few of us on the team, so it really does depend. Anything from collaborations, spaces, reaching out to people in the community. Like every because I have a normal job as well. It's like sometimes I can obviously handle every Friday we have a spaces, and I'll host that. So that's every Friday for an hour, and then again, because I have a normal job, it's very much a balance of we've now taken on somebody else full time as well, who is going to take some of the kind of collaboration kind of weight off my shoulders, because also that takes a lot of research. If you're suggesting that, I always feel if you're suggesting a collaboration or a pre-sale list to like your community, it's my role to make sure that you know who's behind that project, because you're asking them to potentially spend their money on something. So that takes a lot. I don't even think people realize how much time that takes to research. I'll always say to people when they email in is like, is your team doxed? And then they'll start to tell you the reasons why maybe they're not, or maybe they are, but then you go check links out and the links aren't verified. And, like there's so much background to check, but maybe that's why I'm a bit obsessive. Maybe that's why I kind of steer clear of some projects, because I just get a gut feeling. I was once in a Discord and I was asking questions. This was last year. And at the same time, a friend that is now a friend was an ape came in and said, that's such a great point. It's like, I was curious about that too. And the next thing you know, we got booted out of the Discord, and we were both laughing about it because like I went, wow, what happened? Because I've never ever been kicked out of a Discord before, but we ended up having a conversation on Twitter, me and him, and it became quite apparent that I said the best part about it is that the founder of the said project actually followed me as well. So I said, well, I might as well have some fun now. And I messaged the founder, and they were like, oh yes, it was a bot accident. and oh yeah, it must have been like maybe you were creating FUD. And I was laughing. I was like, well, I don't consider like the question of like where is this roadmap going FUD, but like, you know, whatever kind of thing.
That's funny. So so you've been in the space now basically since the conception. Fast forward a little over a year, things have changed quite a bit, and I think they're changing now. What do you see the next year or 2 years looking like?
It's gonna if you put it into meme context, it's like strapping yourself into a roller coaster and somebody just pulling a lever and you don't really know what that roller coaster consists of. It could be like a few inclines and declines. It could be 8 360s in a go. Yeah, every day is
good
different.
analogy.
And yeah, because you just don't know, you know. It's like you wake up to like some kind of drama and, you know, somebody gets stolen art and everybody thinks it's okay that 24 hours later that we all like that person, we'll all move on. And I'm like, no, no, like there's an artist over here that created that. Why is that person not getting any recompense from the fact that you've just stolen their art and you've just made, you know, millions? It's like, yeah. And I think I made a point yesterday on a very large Twitter Spaces, which is, you know, all we have in this space and in life is integrity and legacy. It's what we've got now. That's what we'll take with us for our children and our grandchildren. And those people that stick by integrity and legacy and do the right thing will feel much better and leave behind the place much better, especially because I'm older. So I know that some of the things that everyone's building, I will not be around to enjoy or inherit, but my children and grandchildren will. So I'm a big proponent of everybody trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, you bring up an excellent point. You know, obviously, everyone always suggests that we're still very early in the space, but your legacy is being built now. We see people who have come in, NBA players, famous boxers, people that I really enjoy as athletes attempt to come into the space. And for lack of a better phrase, the view of it now is that it was a giant cash grab. I'm not saying that's what their initial intentions were, but the way that things kind of panned out, and how they, for lack of a better phrase, ended the project, that's a stain that years from now, when this does become adapted by the masses, if they attempt to enter again and do the same thing, I'm not suggesting that they won't be successful, but at that point will at least be brought up. You know, that will be a piece of them forever. And so I think that's something that people don't realize, is that you are building your legacy now. Every single thing that you do, something that our friend Sam Sage says is that the blockchain's transparent and it's forever, right? And so, yeah, that's something that a lot of people don't realize that they're going to have to deal with.
Yeah. But they also don't realize they're in Web 2, whereby these people are relying on their teams and their managers, and, you know, sporting musicians are basically setting themselves up for failure by their own teams. And so it is a shame because they've worked hard to be the peak of their game in the athletic field, in the music field. But this is Web3, baby. The blockchain don't lie. And so obviously their teams are telling them one thing, and then we're over here going, you know, and occasionally people will reach out and ask my opinion on something, and I'll be like, well, why would you want to do that? Like, and they're like, oh, because nobody stands up to them. Like, it's like them seeing, hey, look, you know, this athlete made 3 million. You know, baby, we can put 3 million in your bank account. We just need you to sign the dotted line. And they're like, yeah, let's go. They're thinking about their future because it's limited, especially if they're an athlete. So I understand their perspective of, you know, I'm not going to be able to be a boxer forever. You know, I've even had, like, bizarrely MMA star reach out to me regarding promoting like his account. I was like, it's so bizarre, you know, you just get a DM that's like, hey, promote my account. And I'm like, you for real? Like I've never spoke to you. I was shocked when you followed me because you have a big following, but now I know why you follow me. I'm like, think about this, dude. Why am I like a 50-year-old woman is gonna, like, I love MMA, don't get me wrong.
Oh,
and
you didn't just say
MMA,
that.
and I love
Hey, do you see my
boxing.
posters back here? These are signed fight posters. It's hard to see, but here we go. That's the old school WEC, and that's the Andre Arlovsky, Ortiz Shamrock, the old school signed posters. So you didn't just say that because
Huge
No, I didn't.
MMA fan.
My eyes, I can barely see. But also it's like I used to love WWE as well, and went to like Wembley when all the wrestling was on, and my kids were like kind of like, yeah, we'll go with mum kind of thing, and I was the one jumping up and down. It's like
That's
when the
awesome.
Undertaker came out, I lost my mind. I'm like,
That's
it's
awesome.
the Undertaker. Like my kids are like, I think they were like 12 and like 10, and like they're like, what is going on here? I'm like, this is like an icon, this dude kind of thing. And you know, but again, you know, they reach out, oh, promote, and I'm like, I don't promote, like, because this is on my timeline, and I'm endorsing you by saying, like, you know, and I just don't think, and like, I ended up unfollowing the person because I'm like, this is the way you talk to people. This is not like a conversation. Hey, let's jump on a call. I loved, you know, 10 minutes of your time, and you know, you just have seen that obviously I'm someone in the space that's like around a lot. So then by me retweeting, it gives you kind of that it's okay sign, because, you know, somebody in the space is like, I pick and choose very carefully about obviously what I say and do, because I'm conscious of the fact that, you know, aside of the blockchain and social media as well, is like, it's your integrity.
So, if you could do anything in this space, because you've been collecting, I know you're a business owner, you're now involved with Flower Girls, but if you could accomplish anything in the space, what is that?
At the moment, I used to get asked, not so much now because the space has got a lot busier, but I used to get asked a lot last year about when projects, when are you going to do a project? And I used to laugh at it a lot because I used to get asked every day, and I'd be like, just because I can doesn't mean to say I should. Like, just because I have the ability to create pictures, do drawings or whatever, doesn't mean to say that I should. Just because we can, we don't have to like jump at everything. And I'd rather do, if I do anything in the future, I'd rather it be kind of considered, because again, it's on the blockchain forever. It's like, you know, I'm not the greatest drawer in the world, but if I decide that I want to put a project out because I decide to have an epiphany and go, oh, let's go draw, I want it to be the kind of the best that it can be. It's like at the moment, I love doing fluid paintings when I get time and I'm not working. I love taking photos, and that's how my GM starts, with generally a photo every day of Florida. But we'll see where it goes. Like, I don't feel the pressure of like that I should put something out there and just say to somebody like, I have ideas of what I would like to do, but we'll see. It's like, yeah, we'll see. I'm excited because, you know, it's more exciting to have the opportunity and to be grateful and blessed that you can, than just rush in like a bull in the china shop.
You've had some excellent quotes here today. That's at least the third one that I felt like, wow, that might be just kind of a good clip on its own. So that's really great. Vicky, I do have to ask, we'll make it hypothetical here. If you were to launch a project, what MMA fighter do you think would fit in nice to partner with for your project?
God.
If not, you can just tell me. Really, this is just a roundabout way of me wondering who your favorite MMA fighter is.
I still, it's going to sound weird, just because I think it's about the story and about the characters. And I think even though he's a character in his own right, and obviously I'm English, Conor McGregor is just crazy. Like, he's like, why are you throwing like chairs at like a coach, you know? Why? And once I watched his documentary, and then you see all the kind of background, and you know the pressures that these stars get, and how their egos change. But yeah, he's the meme cult. I love his meme of, yeah, I can't, well, can I swear on here?
Yeah, do your thing,
Yeah.
Vicky, come on.
So one of my favorite memes, and I put it in a Discord a lot, of when people, like, sometimes people come in and say something that like is just completely weird. And one of my favorite gifs is Conor McGregor, where it's like, who the fuck is this guy?
I knew that.
I put that in, and they're like, what? Like this, and I'm like, because he comes marching in with like, and again, it's the same with the wrestling and stuff like that. It's the narrative and the story, the entertainment that we enjoy, you know. And some of the people aren't. One of the things, you meet people in real life, like NFT, NYC, and you see a character that's purported on video or on Spaces or whatever that is large as life, and then you meet that person, they're like, hello, how are you? And you're like, is that the same person? And that's probably the one thing that I've been kind of told that over the kind of last 20 years of being on social media, people, when they do actually meet me, they're like, oh, you're the same as like you are, like you're like in real. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just me. Like, I don't have to like kind of build up any kind of storyline. I think that's the thing, is like, whereas other people are building a narrative of their personalities.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. A lot of characters in this space. Even what's going on now with like the whole Azuki thing and this stuff coming out. It's like, it's unfortunate that's not the first time that this has happened. Like, this continues to happen. And I think even in this down market, and this from being a business owner, anybody can have a one-hit wonder. You can have a good first year, right? Try to have a good second, third, fourth, try to scale, try to see how difficult it is when you're scaling fast and you've got to manage cash flow and you've got to get good operators. And, things at 3 stores are different than it is at 1, so first year is good. Everyone knocked it out of the park that we're able to mint out. But now when the market has a downturn, I think the real characters are going to come out. The, people that can see through this and that are going to stay. This whole WAGMI thing, it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like over the next, couple of years, especially if you stay in a downturn market for a while.
But again, like, I was part of the end of that Spaces yesterday, and I kind of almost wanted it on the record, because the point being is that this guy came up and obviously got interviewed, and I listened to it, and I took time to listen to like what he said. And obviously after he left, I went up, and there was 2 things on my mind about that, which was like, you're talking about millions and millions of dollars, and you're talking about obviously what had been done previously. And as I said, the word that was missing was sorry. He didn't say on that 45-minute Spaces, I'm sorry. And he didn't have any accountability. If he'd have been owned up to it and said, you all know what I've done, and I fucked up, and I'm really sorry, and this is what we're going to do moving forward. We're going to look after these other projects which I should have done. I'm sorry about that. We'll sort that out. And he could have 10x that Azuki project and every other project behind him by the simple words of saying, I'm sorry, and this is what we're going to do. What he ended up doing was saying something very different. And then it bugged me, because he also said that behind the woman's voice of OX Mandy was other women, including Liz, who was on the Spaces. And then at the very end of the space, Liz turns around and says she's only been working for Azuki for 2 weeks. And I'm like, I actually went back and listened to it, because it blew my mind, and I timestamped it on a tweet, because I'm like, if you're going to make a story and you're going to lie about it, be sure that obviously these people are going to be listening to it, so that they know the content and the integrity of the person saying it. And then obviously 8 hours later, the sorry tweet came out, and I'm like, man, like, he's still making money on secondary, and it sucks for everybody involved, because if he'd have just taken accountability 8 hours earlier and been a bit humble about what he'd done to people that are putting their hard-earned cash into his project, it could have been like a very different outcome for everybody.
He couldn't have said it any better. That's so interesting. That's all people want to hear is like, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And you've seen it. There's projects in the space that, you've got AJ, when the project went wrong with Vayner Sports and Gas, and you've got all sorts of different projects where things have happened with regards to avatars as well. And that's how you tell the leaders, from like the kind of people who are there for the cash grabs, the leaders step up and own up and take accountability and say, we messed up, we should have done this. And they go hand-to-hand combat every single person they replied to on Twitter. And that's historic. So then your money is never going to be 100% safe, because obviously it is what it is. But you've got some part of the project that you're involved with somebody that is there to be a leader.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. So we're coming up on an hour now, and we just want to be conscious of time. Before we wrap, is there anything that you would like to talk about on any of your projects, anything that you want to end with?
Probably, I haven't really touched on, because I think it's a whole separate issue, is women in Web3. And I think that it's a whole different ball game and subject. But there are many women that are desperate to try and break through and are not being given the opportunities that they should be given. And I think because I'm a bit older, I'm more like I'm coming through that door and I'm kicking it open, because I got so fed up of waiting for a man to hold the door open for me. I'm like, okay, if you're not going to hold the door open for me and we're going to like do, because I'd rather we do this together and we're a team, but if you're not going to do it, then I'm just going to kick the door in and I'm going to come in anyway. And I think that's what some of the women have started to realize, is that they either need to build stuff themselves because they're not being given the opportunities. And I think that quite a lot of people are shocked when even my husband was like, at the beginning, when I used to say to him, is like, I would request to go on spaces and just get ignored and passed over so many times and talked over, that he obviously, I've been with him for a few years, so like he's used to Web 2. I've been pushed out of the way by people before to get to him in business trade shows. So it just kind of like is there on a recorded space, or having someone talk to you in a certain way. It's a big issue, but yeah, it's interesting. It's a tough subject, because some guys don't even realize they're doing it. And I'll have to say to somebody, so that's like, did you really just kind of like say that to somebody? But like, I'll do it on DM unless it becomes apparent, kind of thing. But it's sad to watch us not be a community of like people, as opposed to kind of like the battle that is having to get a voice in the space sometimes.
Yeah, Vicky, you nailed it. Um, you can't undermine the influence that women have had in establishing culture, art, all of these things. I need your help, and obviously, I know this might not. I'm not asking you for some sort of magic solution, but what can I do? Is there something? Okay, so let me digress. What can I do? I know obviously the answer is let's onboard more women. Help me understand how. My fiance, for instance, I tell her all about the space. She's very happy to help me, pick a piece maybe that I'm deciding between from a visual aesthetics perspective. But how can I really help her take the step to, go from just helping me pick out a piece to becoming involved in Web3?
Well, first, she's got to want to, because that's the other thing. Not everybody wants to be involved in. They see it as a fad. But again, by her having, her own wallet and understanding about the basics of a seed phrase, and even now, like I hear people, like, things go wrong and they're like, oh, can I get a refund for my gas because it didn't go through? And it's very easy to go, no, there's not like a customer call center where you can get a refund for your gas. And it's like, oh, well, I got hacked and this person over there has got my NFT. Can you get it back for me? No. It's like when someone gets hacked, there's multiple victims. There's the person that originally got hacked, then the person that ends up buying it. And there's so much to educate people, and people are nervous about coming in. But once you give people confidence to kind of understand the basic functions of the fact that your seed phrase is the most important thing you'll ever own. My quick analogy before we have to wrap is that a seed phrase, look at it like this way. If you go into like Web 2 terminology, it's like the seed phrase is the keys to your house. So if you go off to work and you leave your front door wide open and you come home and find there's nothing else in your house, you don't ring the police up and say, hey, look, I left my door open. Somebody's come and robbed me, but like, you're the police. Can you pay me back? Like, the police would be like, what? Like, well, no, you left your door open with like wide open for the criminals. And that's exactly your seed phrase, is like, you never share that with anyone. And I think that education needs to be of paramount for people to be able to want to feel comfortable to stay in the space as well. So hopefully over the next kind of few months, there's lots of projects out there onboarding more women into the space and educating people so that they don't feel like it's just like they're going to lose everything.
Absolutely. And couldn't have said it better myself, of course. What it all comes down to is knowledge is power, right? We want to become more powerful. We need to continue to educate ourselves and that sort of thing. Vicky, this is an outstanding show. Really, it's been really great to hear about you, who you were before Web3, how you've made your transition into Web3, the success emulated, not just from a fiscal perspective, but just the presence that you have built in Web3. So I want to end with this. If we are making the Vicky J documentary. Who is playing you in this movie?
Me, of course.
Great. Absolutely. That's perfect.
Only I can be me. I mean, you know, like it's like, yeah, that would be like, yeah. I think it would be too. There's been so many weird circumstances that, like, when you look at the videos of things that have happened in the past. I'm a big believer of serendipity, and everything happens for a reason. And yeah, a bit like when I discovered that Jimmy Fallon followed me on Twitter. I was just scrolling through because people saying Jimmy Fallon had bought an ape, and I actually ended up videoing the clip where I'm like, wait, what? Like Jimmy Fallon had followed me and I wasn't following him. And it was one of those awkward moments where you go, oh, like this is like Web3. It's like you never know. Like it's bizarre because you start to go, well, why are these kind of celebrity people following me? It's like, you know, I'm just me kind of thing. But it's like a meme. I don't take it seriously. Like it's like, and I think the following day Paris Hilton followed me. And again, I didn't take it seriously then. I'm like, man, it's just crazy. And then one of my friends walked into a space where Carol Baskin and I were talking about a project, and he literally went, I never know when, like, I see you speaking in a space, and I went, welcome to my world. And it's just like the craziest space, the craziest ride for all of us.
Ladies and gentlemen, that has been Vicky J. Thank you so much for coming on our show. Can't wait to see what the next few years brings for you, and hope our paths cross at NFT NYC this year. And other than that, we just wish you the best success. And if there's anything we can do to help you out, just give us a holler.
Perfect. Thank you for having me. Have a great show.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Definitely. And again, everybody, if you guys enjoyed this type of content, the best thing that you can do to help us out is tell somebody else about it. Otherwise, the second best thing you can do is like, comment, and subscribe. So thank you so much for tuning in. What you'd like to see on your next show. Until then, we're the Web3 DJs.